All right, and we'll give people just one more minute to jump on, and then we will go ahead and get started. I expect people will be kind of jumping in throughout the evening. All right, so we are recording this presentation here on Zoom, and it will be shared to our YouTube channel after this event, and it is also streaming live on Facebook. So if people are watching this on Facebook, you're welcome to post questions there, and we'll get those to answer us, and we'll get those answered throughout the evening as well. We're really excited to see everyone tonight. My name is Melissa Hoyer. I'm the director of the Susitna River Coalition, and I'm thrilled to be joined with this wonderful group of candidates for 2 MEA seats that people can vote on, I believe, starting today. And ballots are out in the mail and should be hitting mailboxes during the course of this week. So it's pretty exciting to have all these folks here we can ask questions of and determine 2 more seats on the MEA board. We have been, as this is our 3rd annual candidate forum. We've been doing it in conjunction. MEA has been a kind of panelist providing information about what it means to be a member owner. They're going to talk a bit about that in just a few minutes. But just kind of raising awareness and information and helping people make decisions about candidates and the importance of voting in our local utility elections. SRC started in 2011, and we started around the Susitna Dam project and finding alternative options for powering and energizing the Mat-Su Valley, and we're continuing down this route through one of those routes right now is through the MEA utilities and getting more involved in that. And there's a lot going on. It's really interesting. And for those of you who would like to get more involved but may not want to be a board member, there's also opportunities both through MEA and through SRC to be more involved in your utility. So with that, I'm going to run through just a quick overview of what we'll be doing this evening. We're going to start with overview from MEA with Julie Esty, who was kind enough to join us this evening, and she'll be talking about what it means to be a member owner and part of a utility and the MEA utility specifically. And then we'll jump into introductions, and we'll first introduce the at-large candidates, there's 2 of them this year. We have Arthur Keyes and Christian Hartley. And then we'll jump into our Eagle River candidates. We have Robert Seitz, Paul Park, and Mark Hamm. There is one more candidate that we did invite, Lee, who was not able to respond to our invites. So he was not able to join us this evening. And then we'll jump into some questions. We did send all of the candidates 4 questions before this evening, which we'll run through and hear responses from those. And then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And then we'll do a wrap up with the final comments from each candidate at the end. So if you have questions about the MEA membership or specific questions about the utility, feel free to ask those to Julie after she talks a bit about what it means. And then all other questions for candidates will hold until after the question and answer period that we do with our couple questions for folks. And I think with that, and also because there won't be another time, Margaret Stern is here too, our communications and outreach director, and she will be helping assist us a little bit more behind the scenes, but with chat conversations both on Zoom and on Facebook. So feel free, if you're having any technical issues, to reach out, and we have support for that. And with that, I'd like to pass it off to Julie. Julie is with MEA, and I always enjoy hearing what you have to say about the utility. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Melissa. Well, first, I just want to start out by saying thank you to Susitna River Coalition for hosting this forum. This is a really important way for members to learn about their directors, and really voting in your electric co-op is one of the more important things you can do when you think about how much electricity and how it touches not only your personal life, but really all parts of the economy and what we do, how much it touches all of our lives. And we really have a really unique opportunity here along this rail belt region, because every utility that's interconnected here is public power of some sort, whether it's a member-owned cooperative or a municipal led like down in Seward. And that's really kind of unprecedented access to the way decisions are made, and really provides an opportunity for the people who use the power to inform the decisions. And one of the ways that you do that is by voting for your board members. And I just also want to thank each of these board candidates, because they're really, this isn't like a paid position. I mean, there's a small stipend to compensate. I mean, but the amount of time that these guys put in, it's pretty amazing. And we couldn't do what we do without it. I mean, the co-op is founded on a member elected board, and without people who are willing to put themselves out and volunteer to be a part of this, we really couldn't do what we do. So what does it mean to be a member of a cooperative? Well, I think the one that people are most probably informed about is REI. If you go to REI and you buy stuff, then you are, they ask if you want to be a member, and you can, at that point, you can choose whether or not you want to be a member. At MEA, all of the folks that receive power from us are members, whether that's a business membership or a residential member. And that entitles you to a lot of benefits. One is you get to elect the people that run the cooperative, the board of directors. You can also participate on committees. We have several committees that folks can be a part of. The bylaw committee actually takes a look annually at all of the different bylaws that govern the organization and suggest changes that can be on the ballot. And then those are voted on by the membership. We also have an election committee that is the members' representative to make sure that the elections are conducted in, one, accordance with the bylaws, but in two, in adherence to, they're there on behalf of the members, just to make sure that the elections are conducted in a transparent and correct way. And then we have other committees that are more for dialogue. One of those is the Innovation Committee, which was just started last year. And so that's a group of folks that comes together to learn and discuss and ask questions about how MEA is looking at being the utility of the future and what innovation looks like at MEA now and what our plans are in the future for that. And so that's an exciting way that you can come and talk and find out more, but also we get a lot of great questions and a lot of great suggestions from that innovation committee that inform how we move forward. So that's another great way to participate. We also have a scholarship committee. If you're more civically minded, you can sit on that, and we have a small amount of scholarships that we give away every year. So that's a way to help how MEA gives back to the community. Another, not directly MEA group, but related, is we have a roundup program where folks' bills are rounded up to the nearest dollar. That's then pooled and given away to local charities in the community. And so that's a separate nonprofit board, but you can be a part of that too and help make decisions for where that money is spent. So there's lots of different ways to participate on a committee level. And then there's just ways to be heard. You can attend board meetings. You can attend the annual meeting, which is on April 26th at the Menard Center. Doors open at 5, and at 6, the business will start. You can also watch it on Zoom. So this is the first time we've really gone into both. We did, of course, in person forever, and then COVID. And so then we did, one year we didn't have it. The next year we did it all by Zoom last year. And this year the board decided, let's do both. Let's see if we can maximize participation. We had more people attend the Zoom meeting than we had in a long time. So that was exciting to see that kind of participation, but there was folks that still yearned for being in person. So we'll be doing both. So you can come and just listen. You can come and be heard. There's an opportunity to voice your opinion. You can call up your board member. You can be heard at a board meeting. So there's lots of different opportunities to participate in your cooperative. And like I said, really our members are at the heart of the cooperative. We can't actually have the cooperative without your participation. And so that's pretty exciting, especially as we start looking at who we want to be as we look to the future. And the utility industry is changing so rapidly. The utility industry in Alaska, it's an exciting time as we're starting to create structures for more collaboration, and not only the utilities to come together to collaborate, but we're also inviting other stakeholders to that table. There's a new structure that's being created called the Rail Belt Reliability Council. That group will do all of the reliability standards and enforcement, and then they'll also do all the integrated resource planning. And that structure also has a lot of different ways to participate. And so I'd encourage you to learn more about that if you'd like to start thinking more or participating in those discussions, because that is a table that's bigger than just one utility, bigger than just the utilities, but it includes independent power producers, it includes consumer advocacy groups, environmental advocacy groups, it includes the state of Alaska, it includes well, I guess there's a multiple from the state of Alaska. There's an independent board member. And throughout that process, there is a opportunity to participate in that board, also opportunity to participate in that process of creating the integrated resource plan, either as a member of the public, or even you can apply to be a member of the working group. So again, when you think about all the access that the folks in Alaska, especially along the rail belt, have to how decisions are made, it's pretty remarkable and it's pretty exciting during such an innovative and really constantly evolving time in the utility industry. So I will stop rambling there because I know you guys are really here to hear from the candidates, but I'm happy to entertain any questions, and I'll be here through the whole thing too if there's just questions that pop up at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Julie. Does anyone have any questions for Julie before we move on to the candidates? Okay.
While we're waiting, I'll just plug again the annual meeting, April 26th at the Menard Center or on Zoom. You can register for Zoom. You still get the bill credit, even if you're not there in person. And so there's bill credits, there's prizes, there's also voting prizes. So the earlier you vote, the more you're entered into those prizes all the way through. So please vote and attend the annual meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Shaw. You guys giving away a truck again this year?
Always. Yeah, the
Always.
beer truck.
Pretty good.
Yeah. It's a big draw, I have to admit.
It's a big draw.
It's not our presentation, it's actually the beer truck.
Very exciting. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And if people have questions for Julie, if you think of them later on too, we can ask her those later also. So great. With that, we're going to jump into introductions of the candidates. We're going to start with the at-large seats. We did do a random selection, and we're going to have Christian Hartley go first, and then we'll have Arthur Keyes go after, and then we'll talk about the Eagle River candidates after that. So Christian, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, so my name is Christian Hartley, and I know I already have a lot of my information on the MEA website, so I'm not going to repeat the whole thing because it's perfectly accessible from their website. And the more people go to their website, the better informed they can be of everything in general. But the bottom line is I'm a career public safety professional. I've been serving the public my entire life. I'm used to serving the public, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I have also seen firsthand the worst of what happens when short-sighted and efficiency-focused utility planning happens. I'm running because I want to make our infrastructure safer, more in tune with our landscape and our nature around us, and to get us out of conflict with nature and continue MEA's involvement in the community. I'm a very strong supporter of how involved MEA is in the community, and I want to be on board for that. People have always come first for me, their success, their safety, their lives, obviously, because that's my job. My entire career has been built around grant writing, partnerships, networking, cooperative agreements, working with people to accomplish shared goals at a minimum cost to everybody involved. I want to bring that skill, that experience, that knowledge to the MEA board and accomplish some of these things that are seen as pie in the sky dreams for safety because of their expense, and find a way to make it happen. My 3 sons and every other family member of every other member of our co-op are the next generation that we have to set up for success. We have to make the right decision at the right time so that we're not having to fix the wrong mistakes or the wrong decisions later on. And that's it in a nutshell for me. I'm in it for the safety aspect and to try to make things happen that people thought couldn't.
Great. Thank you so much, Christian. And Arthur, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Arthur Keyes. I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I've been a MEA ratepayer for the past 2 decades. I'm a farmer here in the Valley. I have 3 kids. My oldest is a sophomore at the University of Minnesota. I've got a senior at Palmer High School, and I've got a sophomore at Palmer High School. And the quality of life here in the Matanuska Valley is exceptional. I think it's probably one of the best places probably in the country to live. And I'm running so that we can maintain this quality of life here. And that means having affordable, reliable, and safe power. I think with technological advancements that we're beginning to see, especially in transportation, accessibility might become an issue as far as, if everyone starts driving rechargeable cars, making sure that there's options to keep them powered up. And, I think that's just one of the issues. I think technological advancements are amazing. And I think like Julie said, it's an amazing time to live. Just all the things we're getting to see. But again, I've got 3 kids. I want them to come back to this valley. I want them to be a quality of life here for them. I'd like to see them build businesses and lives and have families here. And I'll really like to see them come back to the farm and farm with dad if they so chose. But power, having affordable, reliable power is a huge part of that. And so this is my community. This is where I call home, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you, Arthur. And now we'll switch to the Eagle River candidates. And again, we chose randomly. Paul Park, would you please introduce yourself first?
Yeah, hi, my name is Paul Park. I'm came to Alaska back in '82, and we lived up in Fairbanks for over 30 years, and we moved to Eagle River in 2013. I worked for Chugach Electric as maintenance manager at the new South Central Power Plant for 9 years since we moved here. And previously I'd worked for Gold Valley Electric for about 9 years. So I'm pretty familiar with how the cooperatives work. And I like the business model and the idea of being an opportunity to be on the board and help with the community oversight and utility. I mean, that's pretty exciting for me. I've seen good board members, and I've seen board members that were hard to work with. And I'm excited about being able to do this. So thanks for the opportunity.
Great, thank you, Paul. And next we will have Bob Seitz.
Hello, this is Bob Seitz. And I too am a lifelong Alaskan. I probably got a longer life in Alaska than the rest. Arthur was talking about being a farmer in the valley. My dad was a farmer in the valley in the 30s. So I've had experience. I've had experience with a number of the cooperatives throughout my life. So that's all I've ever known. But I've never participated. And so the reason I'm interested in being a candidate for the board is that I've got a background that I think supports the future development that MEA will be going through with the rest of the utilities. When grid tie and net metering became law in Alaska, I got involved with the renewables. I joined a number of the standard committees, the national standard committees that control those. I've testified at the RCA on what regulations should be in place. And I continue to be involved in those committees, and I help people with doing connects to the grid, whichever association they're tied to. And I've been advocating in opinion pieces and other places that for renewables to work on the rail belt, we need to have long-term energy storage. I know there's been some issues with dams in the past, and I think one of the questions that was out there was, what do you think about the Watana Dam? I was involved with some of the studies in the dam back in 1979. It's been over 40 years and there's still no dam, so I don't think there's much hope that a large dam in Alaska is going to be able to work. Too many people care about the fish and the whitewater rafting. I also went through the Rampart Dam on the Yukon River, but I do advocate for pumped hydro, if there's a way to do that effectively, or energy storage in the form of hydrogen or other things. So I've got a lot of things that I've been involved in. The electric vehicle stations, I've been studying those and the best ways to get those incorporated into the utility. So I think I've got a broad base of technical capability and interest in how renewables can work with utilities to help with the process. I just want to be a help.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. And Mark, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, so my name is Mark Hamm. I've been the board representative for Eagle River for the Matanuska Electric Association for the last year. And I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I moved out to Eagle River about 9 years ago with my family. I'm a father of 4 boys. My wife and I are doing our best to raise these crazy boys and give them a great Alaska experience up here. And you know, I have a degree in accounting, a master's degree in accounting. I work as a chief financial officer for a not-for-profit Native corporation. So I've had before coming to MEA, I had a lot of experience working with boards, you know, understanding how boards work, understanding how the management side of organizations are. And it has been an honor representing Eagle River. And we've done a lot of really good work this last year. And we've kept rates low. There were no rate increases last year. And you know, our rates are among the lowest and most economical in the state. We've made advances with the Rail Belt Reliability Coalition that was discussed. We also added numerous renewable energy. Independent power producers came on. We had the Ram Valley and Eagle River come online, have a power purchase agreement with MEA. Also, we have a power purchase agreement that was signed with a large solar farm in Big Lake that's going to is being developed. And so I was in total support of all those type of projects that can keep our rates low and try and hit these goals that our members have to add more renewables. And so, you know, I was very engaged as a board member, and I wanted just to keep that going. You know, I felt like I did the best to represent Eagle River as I could. Attended all the meetings, was well informed, and so I'd like to just continue to represent our community. I love this place, and you know, electric is a backbone of what we need to have a vibrant economy and community. So that's who I am.
Great, thank you. And now we're going to jump into questions. I'm really excited to hear from all of you. This is just a really amazing group of candidates this session, or this election season, I guess. I'm not sure what to call it, but I'm looking forward to your answers. We did send these questions out yesterday to all of the candidates, so everyone has had a chance to see these questions. I'm going to use I have a random number generator we're using here to pick the order of who's going to go first. And it is going to number 5. So Mark, you get to start us off with this first question. And it is, put it in the chat also so everyone can see it. How do you feel your role as a board member fits into the member owner cooperative model?
Yeah, thank you. So as a member cooperative, you know, all of us represent, any board member is a member. And so we're representing our community. And it's important to keep that in mind when you're attending. You're not representing yourself or your own personal interest, you're representing the community. And that's a unique thing, you know, because we're not out there trying to return a profit for shareholders or anything. What we're trying to do is return a good product for our community at, you know, low rates that are affordable, and to have a safe product for our families and our communities. And you know, it's as was mentioned, you know, you receive a small stipend on the board, but really it's a community service that you're doing. You're here serving the community and trying to protect what currently is there and what is going to be available for your children and children's children for the infrastructure that we're building. So I think another important thing as a board member is you need to be open and receptive to different people's ideas and to be receptive to learning. And, you know, we've been through some contentious issues this last year, and it's important to be able to have your, you know, to be able to listen to other people's viewpoints and to try and come to a decision that's best for the entire co-op. And so
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Christian, would you please answer next?
Certainly. Make sure I'm unmuted there. So I'm already a member owner. We all are. That's how we're even running for the office, but everyone that's participating is also a member owner. I honestly have not felt that my voice has been well represented. Like Mr. Hamm just said, that's the job of the board, is to represent the people. My vision of the board's role is to provide an atlas to the administration of the cooperative on where the community, where its member owners want the organization to be next year, in 20 years, and 40 years, both financially and operationally. It should never be the objective, obviously, of the board to dictate day-to-day operations, but it's also not the job of the administration to forget that we are a cooperative owned by member owners. The board is the voice of the people, the member owners, and at the end of the day, it's the board's job to ensure that the administration is in tune with our vision, with the community's vision, and the people's vision. And this is absolutely not a dig at anybody. Mr. Hamm brought up the solar farm that's coming down the pipeline here pretty soon, fairly large. That's actually in Houston, not in Big Lake. And it's an example of, there's a lot of communities in our service area that never actually see members of the board in those communities unless they go to the meetings in Palmer. I would like to see us reach out more, get more involved. My role as a board member, I want to engage the member owners more directly, not by having open houses, but by going into communities, learning the communities, and seeing what they want in their community.
Great, thank you, Christian. Paul, would you mind going next?
Okay. I feel the board constitutes the public oversight for a nonprofit. So the members own the business, the board represents the members and provides the oversight. I think the board sets tone for leadership, fiscal responsibility, and accountability for the entire organization. The board members monitor the finances, they steer the long-term strategies, they listen to the members, they approve annual budgets that support the members' goals, and they try to produce a reliable, powered, exceptional service. That's what I want the board members to do for me as a member. And so I would like to serve in that capacity.
Great, thank you. Arthur, would you please go next?
Yeah, thank you. So this question, it's a lot like farming. We're all in this together. My neighbors are not my competitors. We're looking out for one another. And I think the board's looking out for the members. That's how I see that. We're driven by practicality, keep the power on, keep the costs down, and deliver the power. I think that's what it's about.
Great, thank you, Arthur. And Bob, would you answer next, please?
Yes. I hadn't thought much about, how the board member fits into the cooperative. But I'm willing, I'm here to learn. Later in life, I've gotten more involved in more public things. So this is another opportunity to give back, what I've picked up over the years. I think everybody else has voiced most of the things that I've thought about, but it has to do with using what I know and my experiences to keep rates low, build reliability, build resilience. And the other thing is, I think, expand the market so we can have a better industrial base, so we can help have lower rates. So, I'm not exactly sure what I'm in for if I do happen to win this seat, but I'm willing to, to give it my all, and we'll see how it fits. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now we'll go on to the next question. And again, we're randomly choosing. And Bob, we're going to have you start us off for this one. I'll paste it again in the chat. Question is, in 2011, the state of Alaska resurrected previously discarded plans to dam the Susitna River 87 miles north of Talkeetna. The estimated price tag the estimated price tag to construct the dam is between $5 and $8 billion. Because this is a state project, the public and the ratepayers would foot the bill. Do you support the construction of the Susitna Montana Dam?
And I kind of addressed this earlier in my introduction that I had experience with the Watana Dam in 1979, and it's over 40 years later, and there's still no dam. And I don't think there's much chance that we could ever get one, even at $5 billion, because there's just too much pressure against it. I think there are other ways to approach the hydropower with pumped hydro, or find rivers that fish don't swim in and have no white water for entertainment value. And I think whatever the size of the lake that this dam would form is probably too large and would have weather altering influence. So while it's interesting, I'm not supportive of it, because I don't have enough time to wait for another 40 years to see a power producing dam. Is that enough?
That's great, thank you. Arthur, would you answer next?
Sure, thank you. So I think from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, it doesn't make sense. When you get into the billions of dollars, there's not enough ratepayers just right off the bat. And then we start looking at the other things that are going on. There are much better opportunities for supporting renewable energy. And the first thing might just be a second transmission line to the Bradley Lakes Dam, and then looking at opportunities once that second transmission line's in, looking at other hydro opportunities that might really be much more practical and feasible for our ratepayers and members.
Great, thank you. Mark, would you answer next, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, currently I don't support the Watana Dam. As mentioned before, the costs are astronomical. And then also the impacts to the community and the wildlife are really, really challenging to mitigate, if not impossible. And there's other alternatives that could be better at lower cost, as was mentioned by Arthur. Right on the top of the list, most of the co-ops in the state think we need to have a double circuited line from Bradley Lake up to the rest of the rail belt so that we can integrate more efficient renewable energy. There's also a number of projects that could happen at Bradley Lake, especially as we have continued recession of the glaciers. That's kind of opening up different rivers and areas down there in the Kenai Peninsula. And these are rivers that don't have fish and don't have some of those impacts that are so problematic. So yeah, I don't support the Watana Dam. I love the Susitna watershed. I take my kids fishing and hunting all over that place. I've shot numerous moose in the Susitna River and caught thousands of fish literally over the years in the Susitna River drainages. So for all those reasons, I'd be very hard to be convinced that it would be a reasonable project to move forward on.
Great, thank you. Paul, would you answer next, please?
Yeah, the Susitna Watana project, they had the state introduced that project again back in 2011, and they kicked it off with the big review and kind of a design basis thing that I was able to attend. And I can remember thinking back then, this seems like too big a project. It's too remote. It's too much money. It's too much power in one location. And it's going to take away too much habitat and back up too much water. It'll be too big of a lake. So I wasn't a fan of it back then, and I'm not a fan of it today.
Great, thank you. And Christian, would you answer this question next?
I should unmute myself. I'm going to repeat mostly what everybody else already said, but I do not support the Susitna Dam. I grew up in Sunshine, about 1 mile south of the Talkeetna Spur Road. I have a lot of friends that live in the area. I still live fairly close, so I hear, community meetings and stuff like that. There is an argument, very strong argument, for how much we need renewable resources and how much we need to transition to more renewable resources. But we need to realize that not all renewable resources result in a positive return to the nature. A dam that drowns out hundreds of square miles of flora and relocates all the fauna from the area is not what we need. 40,000 acre of a lake just to power that dam. Renewable resources renewable resources are our present, and they will be our future. But that does not mean that we need to accept ruinous plans just for the sake of saying that we put in a renewable resource power generation.
Great, thank you, Christian. And we have 2 questions left. I also just want to point out for people who are both on Facebook and on our Zoom that there are 2 links to additional bios with additional questions. One is on the MEA website, which is linked in our chat. And also we had an additional questionnaire sent from SRC that is on our website. So there's quite a bit of additional information there too, if you have more questions as you're thinking after this. And we're going to be doing 2 more questions for all the panelists, and then we'll open it up to the audience to ask questions as well. So for this next question, Arthur, I'm going to start with you. I posted here in the chat. MEA member surveys have shown consistently that over 70% of members support integrating more renewables. The governor recently introduced legislation that would require the railbelt utilities to produce 80% of their energy from renewable resources by 2040. Do you support this goal? And what are your thoughts on how to get there?
Yeah, great question. So I'm just going to start by saying, members, we all like the idea of renewable resources. It's coming. It's going to happen. I think that's obvious. The governor's plan is too aggressive. It lumps all the communities into one and doesn't take into account for the different situations that communities face, such as in Southeast Alaska. Probably hydro is a option in a lot of communities in Southeast Alaska where they get a lot more rain. And up here, it's going to be different. It's going to be different in all the communities. We're a broad and diverse place. Essentially, the governor's plan will institute fines in the tens of millions of dollars on utilities that don't meet this goal. And if we go 80% renewable, MEA members, we have roughly $500 million asset down at the Eklutna power plant. That if we were to go 80% renewable, that asset would basically be mothballed because 80% would be coming from renewable, which wouldn't be a bad thing. However, fiscal responsibility, I think this needs to be figured out by utility and community in each location. They need to figure out how to go renewable. I'm a strong supporter of renewables, but again, the governor's plan is too aggressive, and I don't think it takes into consideration the different communities and the different opportunities that are available in each community.
Great, thank you. Christian, would you go next, please?
Certainly. I do support the governor's objective of 80%. I support that as a bare minimum of what we should be able to achieve, and I want to be a part of making that happen. From 1900 to 1970, there was an increase in emissions in vehicles every year, constantly. There was no incentive and no requirement to decrease the impact on the environment, so why would there need to be any? In 1970, the federal government passed a law requiring that emissions be cut. Amazingly, in only 5 years, we cut emissions by 90%. The technology is there, and with increased demand, with increased requirements, will come the ingenuity and the the technology to make it happen. When we inspire that change, it can happen. I mean, our nation went from putting bicycles in the air for the first time for our first flight to landing on the moon in less than 50 years. There's no reason that we cannot accomplish cutting our impact on the environment with our electrical generation. I also want to encourage, it's been brought up a couple of times, net metering. There's a very low level of participation in net metering because there's a low benefit to the members, to the member owners. To put that electricity back, they receive a significantly less amount than what they pay for that same amount of electricity on the receiving end. What I would like to see is a program, an incentive program to member owners that do provide net metering and do provide electricity back into the system, that they would receive an increase in the amount of payment that they receive from MEA for that electricity, in order to encourage some of that ingenuity and some of that activity and participation from our member owners. We don't have to do this alone. We don't have to be the big corporation that comes in and saves the world. We can remember that we are a group of people and inspire everybody to participate together and make this change happen together. By teaming together the intelligence and the ingenuity of our members with the education, the experience, and the dedication of the administration and the employees of MEA and its union, I absolutely think that we can accomplish that. And I think that 80% should be the bare minimum that we try to accomplish. That's 18 years for us to accomplish this. We can land a man on the moon. We can accomplish cutting our impact on the environment.
Great, thank you, Christian. Paul, would you please go next?
Well, the majority of MEA members survey showed that 70% supported more renewables, but very few of them supported paying more money for their electricity. I agree with defining alternatives to the gas for the future. I don't want to depend on that little gas field, for my power here in another 20 years. But I believe the 80% goal by 2040, that's pretty aggressive. And that only leaves 18 years to accomplish this. And it's set up in stages by so many percentage every 5 years to hit this. And the goal was set by the governor was based on a quick conceptual study by the National Renewable Energy Lab that relied on increasing hydro, wind, PV, and tidal energy in varying percentages to hit this renewable standard. EV charging, I think, is going to represent a very large increase in power generation. And that's not even considered for a load increase there in that NREL report. I think it's too aggressive. I think it puts the utilities in a box because they all already have capital projects that they all have to pay for. And then they're going to be having to borrow money to do more capital projects. And I agree the cost of fuel is going to go down, but the other part of your electric bill is capital payments on the equipment, and that part's going to go up. So I think that it's going to take a while to implement. I think my steps would be to start gathering data for potential wind sites and PV sites, so you can generate the annual production from these sites and determine where good places are to locate the resources of wind turbines and solar arrays. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Paul. And Mark, would you please go next?
Yeah, thank you. So it is dead on that 70% and more of MEA members like the idea of renewable energy. But as was mentioned, year after year, the studies indicate that they're not willing to pay even 10 cents more on their bill. There's some that will and some that want to do that. So that's one challenge. But another major challenge that has been highlighted is that this is a very, very aggressive goal. And not only Matanuska Electric, but Chugach Electric both built really nice, big power plants that we have debt service on. And so, there is no way to go out and gather the capital to make these huge investments that would be required to bring down our power generation or bring it to 80% renewables without some major structural changes. And so I think in some ways, the governor's vision was really broad, and I think it was good. It needed something like that, because currently, as it stands, there's no way possible that we could even get there without some kind of big vision like this, because you have problems with debt service, meeting all your bond covenants. And these are real problems. You have problems with the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. So the Regulatory Commission of Alaska is not going to let us go out and take out huge amounts of debt, hundreds of millions of dollars, to do new projects when we can't prove that we even need those projects right now, because we have plants that meet the capacity that we need. So those are some big issues. But having this vision from the governor and kind of forcing this issue is going to lead to a lot of discussion and change. And I think, perhaps you needed that type of vision so that we can get to this state where we have more renewable options. And my personal thought is the way that this is going to happen, if it gets forced upon us, the only way that we'll be able to do this as utilities is we need a huge influx of federal or state dollars outside of, because the ratepayers won't bear it. And there has to be change at the RCA level and other, legal changes to allow either increased rates, or we need a huge influx of federal dollars. I mean, the other option is you have some white knights come in with these independent power producers that are going to come build all this stuff, but I don't think that's going to happen, so I think it's a great vision. I think it's forcing it within 18 years is a real challenge, and it's there's I think a lot to be developed on this issue and a lot to be discussed on the regulatory and on the legal issues surrounding this. So those are my thoughts. I think it's a great goal and a great vision. I really think we need to do as much renewable as we can, but I don't think this is going to be the final version that's going to work for the rail belt, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. Okay, and our last question, and then we'll open it up to participant questions, and also the candidates can ask each other questions too.
You're not going to let me answer this question?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Sorry, Bob. Yes, please do.
Okay. So when the bill came out, I did respond to both the House bill and the Senate bill, and indicated the same thing that everybody else said, that it's too aggressive a schedule. I wrote letter to the editor on this issue about what the rail belt needs to be able to progress. And the one thing I've said is there needs to be a plan before we can set the schedule for how aggressive the addition of renewables can be. And one of my comments on the bills was that the schedule was too aggressive, and we can go back and visit what the schedule needs to be once the utilities have a chance to develop some kind of plan about how to approach this. Whatever the renewables are going to require additional infrastructure added to the utilities in the form of substations or some other form of power generation other than wind or solar generation may be part of the solution. But there needs to be a plan in place that can be worked over a period of time to determine a better approach to how the renewables can be added. To date, the IPPs or the residential homeowners have added solar panels in fairly small quantities, and it will never get there from here at that rate. But there needs to be a plan, and that's part of my interest. Is I think I can help develop, work with the other board and other people to figure out a plan that can be effective in getting to the goals, but not on the schedule they've got.
Thank you, Bob, and I apologize for skipping you. That was not intentional. Thank you for speaking up. And now we're on to our last question. Paul, I'm going to have you start this one. We know members are concerned about reliability and rates. We've had a large number of power outages in Talkeetna and other remote areas at the ends of the utility system. How do you address reliability and system redundancy to meet the power needs for the entire grid?
Well, MEA's had a tough season. You know, we had that snow in September when, you know, lines were down there in my house. We were out for probably 12 hours on that one. And then with the big windstorm there around New Year's in the valley. I mean, they've had a lot of outages they've had to respond to. From the outside looking in, it seems to me like MEA is doing a good job. I mean, the design of the Eklutna plant, it was robust. It was built with design for planned maintenance. I mean, they've got redundancy built into it. And it's also incremental support for renewables. So, I mean, it's the Eklutna plant is designed for the future. I think the right-of-way clearing, they've been doing that in my area in Eagle River. They've been very proactive on that for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm sure they have right-of-way clearing areas in other places. That's all adds to reliability. They're planning for the future with the Pittman Fishhook transmission line. I mean, all that they're designing in for future growth and adding more substations. I think that I'm not aware of what the problems are out in Talkeetna, but I'm sure that the utility's aware of it. And they're making plans for how they're going to respond to that over the summer and make things better. I think that they're doing a good job.
Okay, thank you. Mark, would you go next, please?
Yeah, you know, as Paul mentioned, it has been a rough year the last 12 months with that mega storm, what do they call it, wind apocalypse that happened in the valley, and also the storms in Eagle River. And one thing that I might share that others may not know, it was discussed in a board meeting. The question came up, you know, of these hundreds of trees that came down and these massive outages, how many of those were in the right-of-way? And the answer was 0. None of them were in the right-of-way. These were all trees that were outside the right-of-way. You know, MEA has a plan that every 6 years they clear all the right-of-ways. And when I approved the budgets and we reviewed it, it's a major budget line item every year supporting these right-of-way clearing contracts. And so it, you know, it could be a challenge of messaging. And you think about that huge event that we had, that 0 trees from the right-of-way. So, you know, actually caused all those outages. You know, at the same time, we have a beetle kill epidemic raging through South Central. And there's, you know, many trees outside the right of way that are dead or dying. And, you know, I think one way that MEA might be able to help with some of the reliability and related to this issue is to approach homeowners along all these right-of-ways. Particularly, there's records on where a lot of these outages are coming from. And it takes outreach efforts to meet with these homeowners. A lot of them are not receptive. They don't want MEA to come on their property. You know, they don't want MEA to come and cut down their trees, even if they're dead. You know, MEA does have a danger tree program. They'll come down and cut down any tree on private property for free for any member that is in risk of hitting a power line. So from that standpoint, I think MEA is doing about all they can right now, unless there's some kind of legal changes that would allow them to go and clear more aggressively outside of the easements. We're doing everything that we can. From a reliability standpoint, you're planning for the future. We have this extension in the Pittman Road, and there's, you know, new substations being built every year for this huge amount of growth that we have in the valley. And then also, it was just built right into the Eklutna plant. One thing that many people may not know is that plant is a dual fuel plant, so it can change instantly from natural gas to diesel. And so it also has a cold start. So if we have an earthquake, we have anything like that, that thing can start right back up. And so reliability is built into the system as best it can. We are an island system up here, and there are certain challenges with being very spread out with the valley, but I think we're doing well. But it's something that we're always trying to improve. And I think, that attitude of continuous improvement will continue to serve MEA as they're trying to address these issues and help our members. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Arthur, would you go next, please?
Yeah. Hey, yeah, thank you. So I think Mark's kind of nailing it right there. 90% of all outages are from trees falling on the line. And I think there's probably a really great indication that MEA just needs to work with its members to start pursuing these out of easement trees that need to be cut down, and just be a little bit work a little bit more on that. I think that's probably the most cost-effective thing that can be done about the outages that we've had. I mean, Alaska has inclement weather. I have a commercial greenhouse that goes through 100 plus mile-an-hour winds, and occasionally it's gotten ripped apart in that. And there's just nothing we can do about it. We get terrible weather here, and it's going to be one of those things that we're always dealing with. But working on those out of easement trees so that they're not coming down on the line, I think that's the low-hanging fruit to go after here. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Okay, Bob, would you please go next?
Will. So on this, the reliability and the rates, I think it is the same answer I had before, that it takes a plan to figure out how to do that. I think MEA's done an excellent job of getting power back when there are outages, and a lot of them are things that are very difficult to contend with, especially when the wind's blowing and trees are falling on the workers. But there's a number of things that have been brought up that need to be done to improve utilities. They mentioned microgrids and other things and other forms of renewable energy added to the systems. But one problem with microgrids is you can't do it with just a battery system. You have to have a generator wherever you want to isolate part of the system. And there's not a lot of generators along our utility line. So again, it's going to take a plan to figure out what needs to be done next that would help with reliability. And then we have to look at it. How do we approach that without raising our rates? So it takes a lot of planning, both on the money side and the technical side.
Great, thank you. And Christian, would you take the last answer for us, please?
Absolutely, and it's appropriate that it's the last one, because it's the one that nobody wants to hear. It's expensive. Make sure I'm unmuted. So I'm going to be upfront. My answer is not the answer that many people are looking for, but it is the answer that a lot of people silently would like to see. This year is more recent, so it stands out. We all remember what New Year's was like. But the fact is we lose power every year, multiple times for extended periods of time in various areas. When a car hits a pole, we lose power. When the wind blows, we lose power. When the snow unloads, we lose power at the most vulnerable time, in the cold. Today in Palmer, over 2,800 members lost power for an extended period of time. We lose power all the time for all sorts of different reasons, because we are a very diverse and very spread out utility. When the dead trees fall, we lose power, and we also have wildfires during the summertime. The spruce bark beetle infestation is only getting worse. And I can tell you from my personal experience in the fire service, I'm thinking on it hard right now, but I cannot recall a single wildfire in the Mat-Su that was caused by a tree falling on the power lines from within the right-of-way. We cannot force people to be stewards of their own land, but what we can do is mitigate the risk of our infrastructure, of our investment, of what we provide to the people. I am a very strong proponent of buried lines. They are not at risk to wind. They are not at risk to snow. They are not at risk to spruce bark beetle devastation. They become that you, by mitigating that risk, you decrease those power outages during those events. Maintenance is a whole different ballgame, obviously, but every other utility has buried lines. There is no reason why we could not accomplish that at MEA as well. We can partner with agencies. We can partner with organizations. We can look out for grants. There are wildfire mitigation grants that could be used to help supplement the money spent to make this happen. There's workforce development grants where we can educate people on, or educate professionals on how to maintain these lines, that we can partner with other funds to make this happen. There are historical preservation grants. How much history is there in the Mat-Su Valley that could be protected if we would stop having these devastating wildfires? I keep hearing we can't because it's too expensive, but we can if we just increase the size of we. If we reach out to these organizations and agencies and federal grants that are out there and make this happen. The bottom line is you have to pick between efficiency for cost and resiliency for safety. And when it comes to lives being on the line, I will always choose resiliency, redundancy, and safety. And that's all I have on that.
Great, thank you, Christian. Those were excellent. I appreciate everyone's thoughtful responses. Yeah, I thought that was a really great round of questions. I'm curious if we have a couple of questions coming in, and I'll read these off to candidates, and people can just kind of feel free to answer them as you are inspired to. We'll also be taking questions from Facebook. And if people have additional questions, please feel free to either type them into the Q&A area or into the chat if there's any issues with the Q&A part. Our first question is from an anonymous attendee. If I'm not totally sure, but I think I understand the question. If there were federal infrastructure dollars, would your answer to the RPS question change? That was the renewable portfolio standard, the renewable energy question, 80% goal. Would anyone like to take the first stab at that?
I'd be happy to take a stab at it.
Great.
Yeah, my answer would change drastically. If there was, there are estimates that may need to be almost $1 billion or more. But if that money was available all of a sudden through this infrastructure package and it was available, then for sure, I think we could make some great strides towards trying to do this. As I mentioned in my previous comments, some of the biggest hurdles right now is the debt service on our existing plants, which are great plants, but they're gas burning and so they wouldn't meet this standard. But so if you didn't have to deal with the burden of, you could still recover on rates and pay off that debt service and didn't have to deal with the challenges from the RCA about, taking out debt for new projects when they would consider them not needed. All of that would be bypassed by federal dollars. And so, yeah, my response would change drastically. And I believe most co-ops could see that the writing on the wall really quickly. They're going to go after that money if it was available.
Thank you,
I'll
Mark.
respond.
Great.
Yeah, I don't think I would change my answer. I still would, contend that we need to have a plan first. The money being available just helps us know that we can finance whatever we plan for, but it doesn't matter how much money there is. If we throw money at it and don't have a plan that we're working towards, it doesn't do any good. It's just a waste of money. So we need to have a plan. And once we got a plan, then we can, make application, or you can make application, and if we can put it in the bank and do the planning to figure out how to spend it.
Okay, would anyone else like to answer that question?
Melissa?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the biggest problem, and 80% renewable is a great goal. The biggest problem is the fines. There's going to be these deadlines that be hit, and I'm not too familiar, but there's deadlines to hit on this plan that the governor has put in place for 80% renewable by 2040, and the tens of millions of dollars in fines that the members of MEA are going to have to pay if they're not hit. I don't like that. And there's plenty of we do have examples of public and private cooperation to produce renewable energy. There is the solar farm up in Houston, and that is a great example of what when private and the co-op, two groups come together and create something that doesn't add a single cost to our ratepayers to increase our dependence on renewable resources, renewable energy. So I think I like those better, and I don't like the fine. Move away from the tens of millions in fines, and then I think move forward with a plan. So thank you.
Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah, I'd like to see us, we definitely have to upgrade the transmission infrastructure from Bradley Lake to Anchorage and upgrade from Teeland on up to Healy. If we're going to incorporate, if we're going to bring them into this rail belt reliability and in this renewable portfolio, and that way we can run power both ways. The second thing would be to go ahead and get our performance data and get our site data to have the wind farms and have locations for this stuff. So we have projects ready to go if there is money available. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Christian, would you like to respond to this question?
Yeah. Obviously my answer doesn't change because I do support it. However, I do agree with the wisdom of the other people. You know, you can accomplish a lot more things in life in general through education, not regulation. I think that we need to go to the table. I believe that we need to go to the table and say, yes, our objective is 80% within the next, before 2040, but we need you to remove these metrics along the way because technologies might not come out yet at the time that we need them to accomplish that objective. I do support increasing our transition to renewable energy. I do believe in the 2040 goal. I do not agree at all with fining organizations for failing to meet an arbitrary or capricious deadline along the way.
Great, thank you. Okay, our next question is from Colleen. How do you think increase in demand of electricity from both growth and electric vehicles should be addressed by MEA? Mark, I see your hand up. Do you want to start? Was that for this question?
Yeah, that's for this question. So this is a great question. And I think there's a couple things that MEAs we've discussed and we're working on as right now, and that should be a focus into the future. And one thing is some of you may have noticed that MEA added a demand reading on our bills recently. And the idea is to get people kind of used to seeing that, because the idea is if we want to not have to build new plants, we need to maximize all of the plants that we have right now. So there's some big fluctuations in when demand is hitting our system. And so especially as the future is upon us and people have more electric vehicles, if they all came home at about 6 o'clock at night and plugged in all their vehicles after commuting to Anchorage, that would be a huge drag on the system. And ways to alleviate that is to have a time of use rate, which would incentivize people to charge their electric vehicles between 2 to 6 in the morning or something like that, so that you could have a much more smooth use of electricity across the day. And so that would alleviate the need for additional plants. And then, another thing that I think we need to continue working on is currently we have a power pool agreement between Chugach Electric and Matanuska Electric. And what that does is we have our plants working in conjunction simultaneously and giving information back and forth in real time, so that whichever plant is generating the most efficient can be generating, and you share the costs and share the savings between each plant. And I think that type of cooperation between utilities is key to ensure that we can have good growth without having to build new plants. And so I think those are some things that I have in my mind to help with growth, and especially with EVs coming online.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'll go.
Great.
I think Mark, his comments are just right on. It's interesting because if you go to Golden Valley's website and you look for Eva Creek, you can see the wind profile, and it seems like they get more power off the wind at night. It's real interesting the way the wind patterns are. And as far as the power plants go, if you can run the combined cycle plants at 100% output, that's their sweet spot. That's where they get the best efficiency. And if you can load those plants up and be able to keep the Eklutna as incremental up and down as the time of day changes and the load changes, that would be the best use of the current assets that all utilities have. Thanks.
Melissa, I want to add one thing. Another thing I think we need to do as a system is I think there's an importance to add kind of a battery capacity to the systems too, to buffer these fluctuations, especially as you have wind and other types of renewable resources coming online that like Paul just mentioned, may come on when we don't need them. And so there's a lot of options with some of these major battery stores that can, there have been some studies done by MEA and Chugach that it could save us some significant amount of money. Although we would have to put out a decent chunk of money it would save over the life of those batteries. And I think that kind of thing can really help. It's all a matter of buffering the inputs and outputs on our system to be the most efficient.
And I'll respond now. Mark just stole the answer I was going to give. Before he spoke.
Sorry about that, Bob.
Yeah, I am on the energy storage committee, so I've been dealing with batteries a lot, and I lived in Fairbanks when they built the big BESS battery up there. But one of the things is, they've always pumped hydro at the low rate time at night, so we can dispatch our renewables to charge the batteries, so that the battery energy is available when the high demand on the electric vehicles or other time of day things occur. So, and then it's just part of the planning we have to do is work to plan to figure out what problem are we trying to solve, and if high demand for electric vehicle charging is an issue, we can work that out. But that's what those batteries are for. They're for short-term energy storage, or that kind of need. Yes. I should have been faster. Beach.
Thank you, Bob. Arthur or Christian, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, I think the agreements between all the utilities are going to be key to the future, whatever direction we go. The efficiencies of our plant versus the other plants with the turbine generation, they operate at 100% load, 100% efficiency. That's where they need to be operated. The other utilities generators need to be operated at 100% efficiency. A Clutna can absorb the load and up and down and keep the entire system running efficiently. And I think those agreements are going to be vital. I think a good cooperative relationship with the other utilities is incredibly important. And however we move forward, that is a very important component of anything we do, is those good relationships. Thank you.
Thank you. Christian, would you like?
Yep, I'm starting to drive now, so I apologize for losing the video there, but you don't need to see the inside of my car. So there is really nothing I can say that has not already been said very eloquently. There does need to be some sort of method of metering out, of leveling out the power demand. So I do believe, I agree with everything that everyone else has already said to this point. We do need to help level out the demand so that it's more equal throughout the day and throughout the night, instead of having high demand times for when people have their vehicles or other items plugged in. So finding some way of battery technology or whatever it takes to make that happen is the key. That we can encourage people through education to have those batteries in their homes to help level out that demand.
Great, thank you. And now we're going to go to a question from Facebook. This is directed at Bob, but everyone's welcome to answer it. It says, the Facebook participant says, Mr. Seitz mentioned pumped hydro as a future generation option. Would you be open to considering converting the Clutna hydro plant to pumped hydro? And Bob,
I'm familiar with this question because somebody's proposed this already, and I know that AEA has looked at this and considered that it was not as cost effective as pushing forward on the Watana Dam. But I think this is some of the planning that needs to be looked at, is whether or not the Clutna Lakes can be used effectively. You know, I support the idea. I still need to look at the numbers to see how practical it is, but it's still worth looking at. It's whatever, it's there and needs to be looked at. It was a hydro plant before. So
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to answer this question? Okay.
Can you please repeat it again?
Yeah, would you be open to considering converting the Eklutna hydro plant to pumped hydro?
I will confess ignorance on the topic, but I will say that everything that is, there's nothing that's not worth looking into. I'd be open to any opportunities to increase our power demand as long as it does not negatively impact the community that we're in and does not increase demand on fossil fuels.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer this question? Okay. We'll go to a question from Rachel. How do you think we could increase membership engagement with the utility? And do you think there are currently any barriers to member engagement?
I think if the rates stay low, members are going to be happy, and they're probably not going to engage beyond what they already are. But so it's a hard question to answer. How do you increase membership involvement, and how do you want members to be involved? Would be my question back to her.
I found
Go ahead.
I found that the board meetings are televised now on Zoom, and anybody can sign in and zoom in and see what's going on and listen to what's being said. There were members there that were some of the board member meetings that I've watched. One of them in particular had people from the Pittman Fishhook project. They were in there talking about the transmission line routing and pro and against, and they lined up and they were giving their stories. So I mean, I think that there's ways for people to be involved if they want to be involved. It just, I guess, if it's advertised, I mean, it's in the MEA newsletters, people know where to go to find that stuff. They can be as engaged or I guess disengaged as they want to be.
Yeah, this is Bob. I think if some kind of program is developed that encourages people to, look at the innovation stuff. I think you mentioned that there was an innovation, or Julia did, that there's an innovation group. If people find out that, the MEA would be interested in their responses, their attitudes, or their input, that they've got an idea they think might be useful, should be able to get more involvement from them and encourage that at the meetings, the board meetings, and the online stuff, so that people are more encouraged to look online, at the website and to try to participate. If they know that somebody may actually listen to them, they'll be more, more inclined to participate.
I think MEA does a good job and we could do better at engaging with the public. As was mentioned before, I've sat in board meetings for the past year, and at the beginning of every board meeting, there's a section called Members to be Heard. And anyone who wants to come in from the public is allotted 3 minutes. And we've got some frequent flyers that come in, every meeting or so, and they tell us their piece. And then we have other people that, they have a special topic, and most of the people that come receive a response back from the board. It may not be at that point, but and I will say, as a board member, a number of interesting discussions have happened, not necessarily right in front of the member. Sometimes during an executive session or after the fact, there's been kind of questions about management, about, is this true? What has come up? And so I found that very, very good as a board member to see that and to feel like you're hearing from people, and people are able to come in person or on Zoom, because it's not always easy for someone from Eagle River to come in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if they're working in Anchorage or something like that. So we have plenty of people doing it that way. I think continuing to reach out to members and let them know and just is to be there. We have a whole team of people like Julie Esty and some of her staff that go to pretty much all the community council meetings. And I see the reports that they give back, and I'm impressed with that and their engagement. So, I mean, we have 3 kind of public representatives that are out in the community, like Julie Esty, who's on this meeting, and attending meetings and stuff, you know, representing MEA. So I think we're trying to do the best we can. And, but, you know, if someone has a different idea, come to the meeting and tell the board what you think, and we'll see what we can do to try and do better.
And
Thank you, Mark.
if I can answer.
Please.
So I disagree with the statement about, so MEA does do a really good job of reaching out to its member owners through the newsletters for the people that receive the paper bills. However, there is not the participation that we need. There is a lot of participation from the core area because there's a lot of people in the core area that can attend those meetings. People that are not in the core area, their only option is Zoom. Their only option is somehow dialing in. It would be in the benefit of the board to meet at other locations throughout the course of the year to get that community engaged more directly. So rather than it being, say, 40 people from Palmer, 30 from Wasilla, and a couple people that managed to make the drive down from Trapper Creek, it could actually be 20 people from Trapper Creek being able to attend the meeting to speak to something that involves Trapper Creek. Coordinating more and more open houses that don't get the engagement that we want is not working. That is not what will get the people involved right now. I have open town hall meetings all the time for fire department, for city of Houston, for planning commission, for different boards that I'm on. We don't get people to come to those meetings. We are in a society now where people want us to reach out to them and engage them directly, not say, well, the phone works one way, give us a call if you want to get more involved. I do think that we need to get more involved in more communities, not by offering, oh, well, there's another way that you can come in to the meeting hall in Palmer. There's another way that you can watch the meeting in Palmer. We need to get out to those other communities and respect those neighborhoods and get more people, more hands-on.
Great, thank you, Christian. Anyone else would like to answer this question? Okay, we'll do one last question from the audience, and then we'll do a closing statements from candidates. The last question is from Colleen. For those who think that the RPS goal is too rushed, what timeline do you think would be appropriate to legislate? Any takers?
So this is Christian. I'll jump on that first. I will say that obviously you know my position on it, but I would concur with the opinion that was stated earlier that if the problem with 2040 is that you need to have a plan in place before you set your trigger marks, before you set your metrics, that's not going to solve the solution by saying, oh, well, what would be a better date then? If there was going to be a negotiation on the date, it should be changed from the date to creating the plan and making that plan happen. So it's hard for anybody to set a different date. The job of a leader is to just set the goal and encourage people to run the race to accomplish that objective. And that is what the governor is attempting to do by setting a deadline, a date. But to change it to a different date doesn't change the fact that you do still need a plan to accomplish it.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question?
I essentially agree with what Christian just said, because I've been advocating for a plan And that's what I indicated in my response on the legislation, that there needs to be a plan in place before we can set this. We can, move the, pick a date that's out there somewhere that's far enough that it might make sense, but without a plan, you still don't know how realistic that is. But the fines make it, even more difficult. You can have the date set without having the fines that would be assessed if they didn't make the grade. Between that and the dates, between the fines and the dates, it's difficult. But there needs to be a plan before anybody can figure out what they can do in any amount of time.
Great, thank you, Bob. Paul, Arthur, or Mark?
Yeah, I would just add, I don't think the fines are a huge problem. Setting a date without knowing what technology we're all going to pursue, the different utilities are going to pursue, that makes the date a little bit arbitrary, and it makes the fines punitive. And asking, the members of MEA to pay tens of millions of dollars in fines, or not asking, but telling them they're going to pay tens of millions of dollars in fines if we don't accomplish this goal, that without a plan is somewhat arbitrary, with an arbitrary date. I don't think that helps the conversation at all. It is going to be expensive to go and transition into renewables for our energy sources. And I think everyone supports that. I think that the evidence from the membership is that they want us to go in this direction. They just don't know about paying for it. And so I think I'd rather see the governor's office come up with, or RCA come up with ideas for, in this community, this renewable would work, and in this community, this renewable would work, and say, hey, and work it out and figure out that with the current bond load that we currently have with the Eklutna plant and all our other responsibilities we already have, it is, the math works out to take on an XYZ amount of debt to fund this project that's going to take us so far down the road to our goal of whatever that goal be. 80% is I think arbitrary, but whatever project would get us farther down that goal, come up with a timeline for the different communities to implement those things, and do it without fines, without punitively punishing the members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark or Paul?
I couldn't say what time would be best, but I think a cooperative approach, working with the main utilities on the rail belt, and trying to work out a logical timeline is what would work. And I think you'd have better buy-in than just throwing out that number. And I like the vision that the governor had, and kind of jump starting the issue, but I think it needs to be more developed and to actually be able to have a workable plan, and I believe that means pushing it out. I'm not an expert on these things, so I can't, I would rely on the experts at the utilities to work up a workable plan and try and work together to make that happen. Whether that's 2040 or 2050, I can't say.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that the members sometimes understand how long it takes to do a utility grade project. If they were to say tomorrow that they were going to go ahead and do the Watana Susitna Dam, that's 8 to 10 to 12 years out. And it's the other problem is that by the time something that big was built, a lot of the electronics and a lot of the equipment in it would be on the verge of obsolete. Even with our new plant there, Two Gatch's new plant at South Central, some of the exciters and stuff like that, we were having a hard time getting parts for 3 or 4 years down the road. It's just the way that the product cycles work. We don't know what kind of new technology is going to come along in 10 years. I think an incremental approach to adding renewables so we can see what it does to our grid is you start taking the big generators off without the big frame units over at Beluga. The grid has started an oscillation issue. And I think that it's going to take more capacitors and things like that, and probably battery banks to keep the hertz, to keep the frequency within a controllable range. So there's more to it than just, you know, buying stuff and connecting the wires to it.
Great, thank you. And now we will wrap up with kind of closing statements from each of the candidates, and we're going to go in reverse order from introductions. So we'll have Eagle River go first, and I'll go in that reverse order, and then the at-large candidates will go second. So Mark, would you mind going first with your closing candidate statement?
Sure. Well, thank you, Melissa, and thank you to the Susitna River Coalition for hosting this. I appreciate the involvement. And so, you know, what I did during my first year on the board is, I believe, what you'd get more of in the next 4 years if I was reelected. You know, I continued focused and being engaged, you know, reviewing budgets and making sure and working with management to ensure that we have proper oversight of public utility, and continue to work with management to keep rates low. Like I said, you know, our rates did not go up at all last year. And a lot of that has to do with just proper management and oversight in the budgetary process, and setting the right tone at the top. And you know, also, while I was been on the board, we've, as mentioned before, we brought in 2 new independent power producers, or at least we brought on the Ram Valley, and then we have a power purchase agreement with the new one being developed. And so I definitely encourage all of that type of stuff. There's a lot of exciting things going on, and you know, I'm happy to be engaged and to continue working with Eagle River and representing our community. And I just hope to be able to continue to do that for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Bob, would you please give a closing statement?
Okay. And I don't know, you know, just have to repeat stuff that's already said, I guess, but, you know, I'm interested in the process that that the utilities have going forward, trying to keep rates low so that we can encourage industrial and other commercial development, so we can have an economy for whatever the future will bring. So we've got enough economy going that we can afford to add the renewables that are you know, being encouraged to be added to the utility. You know, this will be a new experience for me if I do get on the board. But I think I've got the background to be effective in that position. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bob. Paul, would you please give your closing statement?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Susitna River Coalition for putting on this forum. Some interesting questions and chance to kind of hear everybody's responses and kind of talk through it. And I think everybody here is for the benefit of the utility. You know, I just would like to remind everybody that our member-owned cooperative is a nonprofit, and there's nobody's getting rich working at these utilities. So everybody's serving, they're doing a good job. I think that by it being a nonprofit, it changes the way the utility business decisions are made long-term. And so the long-term decisions are based more on service life than they are on cost. I don't believe that a low electric cost has to be balanced with reliability and service. And if your cost gets too low, you're not going to have enough money to do a good job with your maintenance and with your service. So I would be hesitant to always focus on the cost of your electricity, because when your power's been out for 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, pretty soon you really don't care how much it costs. And you don't care how much you save for that year. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity. Good luck.
Great, thank you, Bob. And now we'll switch over to the at-large seat. Arthur, would you mind giving your closing statement?
Yeah, first off, thanks for the opportunity. This has been really interesting. My first debate I've ever done. These are exciting times that we live in. There's the technological advances that we're seeing, the transition in the transportation sector to electric. I see it coming. I see it coming here on my farm. I have a piece of farm equipment that's battery. You ride on it and it's battery operated, and you drive it around. So I see it coming. I see it happening. I'm excited. I'd like to be a part of that, help steer it and make sure that, like I said, when my time here is done, that, and my kids are growing up here and they're getting ready to raise their family here, that there's affordable, reliable, safe, accessible power for them. And so that they have the same opportunities that I've had. So with that, that's why I'm running, and I appreciate everyone's support. Thank you.
Thank you. And Christian, would you give your closing statement?
Absolutely. I'll try not to be as long as my intro was. So I also would like to thank the Susitna River Coalition for the questionnaire, for the opportunity to speak for myself, but also for being proactive on being engaged. MEA board seats are often overlooked in the community. They get the ballot in the mail or the email, and oh yeah, I need to get that done. I don't know these people. Organizations like yours actually get the information out there to people to make informed decisions, and that's so important. The two main things that I would like to say is I very much want to see a more resilient, more safe infrastructure, but I believe that we can accomplish that by working with other people. I think that we can do it within the governor's goal of 2040. I think that we can lead. This utility is a leader in the state of Alaska. We had a 7.1 earthquake epicentered in our service area, and power was on within 5 hours of that earthquake to the areas that were most directly hit by that earthquake. We had a massive snowstorm this January, unprecedented in the amount of electrical loss that it had done, at least in recent times. MEA made the phone calls they needed to. They got partners out here, and they got power back on as quickly as they could for enormous. I mean, this is our service area is the size of Ireland, and they got power on within a week. That is an accomplishment. For the majority of people, it was on within a week. It's still unfortunate that it was out for that week. And I believe that we can take actions to limit that exposure to those risks of windstorms and snow loads. But I will also say that as far as the area-wide seat, there will be no loser, no matter which one of the two of us come out on that ballot day, the day that votes are tallied, because there are a lot of things that Mr. Key says that make a lot of sense. If I'm elected, I will be reaching out to him for his wisdom and his knowledge, because that is what is most important thing, is teamwork, community, and making things happen. If you can't do it by yourself, increase the size of we and make it happen. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And Julie, would you like to make a closing comment?
Just briefly, I just want to say again how thankful I am to this group of candidates. I think it's going to be a really hard decision. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I am so impressed by this group of candidates and their knowledge and their enthusiasm. It's pretty awesome to have this group, this slate. And I know I just have to make one hard decision for the at-large candidate, but I know the folks in Eagle River, it's going to be tough choices. So thanks again for the candidates, and Melissa and Margaret, thanks so much for hosting this forum. It really is what's at the heart of our cooperative. So we appreciate you guys participating.
Well, thank you so much. I agree. This is great. And I don't envy anyone, especially Eagle River folks who have to make two decisions. But thank you all so much for being here tonight and for the excellent, well thought out answers, and just really bringing it all. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future of the MEA board. And it's a real pleasure for us to be a part of this. And thank you for everyone who participated both via Zoom and Facebook. And again, we are going to share this afterwards. So if you missed it or want to share with your other friends or groups, feel free to share this video around. I know it is tricky to get information out. And with the election happening now, don't forget to get your ballots in and vote. And if you get a ride in that, if you get that truck, I expect a ride from anyone here who wins. And thank you all so much and have a great night and good luck with the election to all the candidates. And thank you, Julie, for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.